American crisis at the border, next on One Nation. Hello, America. Welcome to One Nation. I'm your host, Dr. Jake Jacobs. Now, many of you have been regular watchers of the Jake Jacobs Show, or the One Nation Show. You know that I am very concerned about what's happening on our southern border. Some bad stuff on our northern border, but primarily on our southern border. I used to live in Arizona. I spent quite a few winter months in Arizona now, and I make a point of going to the border and connecting with a number of my friends who live down there. And what I'm telling you right now, there is an American crisis at the border, an American crisis at the border. And it's something that has a very deleterious effect upon the freedoms of Americans. And I know that it's very important for us to be aware of what's going on and the lies and deception that are going on our southern border. So when I went down there, in fact, the year before I went down there on the border with a dear friend from Arizona Border Recon, and we saw the cartel, and my wife was with me. I got in trouble for actually bringing her along. It's a long story, but she was blown away at what she saw. The stories we heard about sex trafficking and all the fentanyl, the rainbow fentanyl that's been laced with Chinese drugs and things related. The stories of the sex trafficking, human trafficking flooding up to the southern border. My wife couldn't believe it. And she would say to me over and over again, why isn't the media, mainstream media, covering most of this? And I said, because they are a part of the problem. So this last winter, we went down there with fixed TV, and we ended up visiting a number of friends. One gentleman by the name of Jim Chilton. He's an 84-year-old Arizona rancher. Has 50,000 acres near the border. He resides in Arivaca, Arizona, which is 8 miles away from the border. He has those 50,000 acres plus 5 miles of his property is right on the Mexican border. So Jim and his beautiful wife, Sue, he calls her Super Sue. She used to be a teacher in the inner city of Los Angeles. She's won all kinds of awards. She was, like myself, a graduate of Arizona State, and she majored in Spanish. And she worked with those, Spanish, Latino children and did a wonderful job. She's a wonderful human being. Well, Jim and his wife, Sue, had my wife and I and our cameraman, Scott, down on the border. He served us an incredible, beautiful steak. He's got over 1,000 head of cattle. And this 84-year-old Arizona rancher is profoundly concerned with what's happening. He's been actually speaking out for many, many years about what's been going on down on the southern border. He's testified before Congress. He's testified before a legislature in the state of Arizona. He's had cartel all over his property. He has evidence upon evidence of what's been going on with the coyote spies that are on his property, and they're actually strategizing on how they can bring through the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, and the drugs. We were even down there, and we saw cartel. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So we did an extensive interview with Arizona rancher Jim Chilton. We also, my dear friend, who's now running for the Senate in the state of Arizona, his name is Mark Lamb. Here's a book I'm holding up called American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World. He is the sheriff of Pinal County. Now, a little bit of Arizona geography. On the southern border, one of the big counties is Pima, which is predominantly the Tucson metropolitan area. And that's where I spent a lot of my time. Now, I went to Arizona State, and that is Maricopa County, where you know there was hanky-panky going on with the election of Kerry Lake that should have become governor. That's another story in itself. But sandwiched in between Pima County and Maricopa County is a elongated county, one of the fastest growing counties in America, called Pinal County. And Mark Lamb is the sheriff there. I've interviewed Mark Lamb on a number of my shows about how concerned he is about what's happening on the border and how Joe Biden and Mayorkas are lying through the teeth about this. He wasn't available when I was down there. He was out of the state. I think it was a sheriff's convention. And he says, Jake, I've got a lieutenant who's an expert on this. His name is Lieutenant Chris Lepre. It's funny because when I met Chris thought I was a hardcore left-wing Jake Jacobs out of California. And he was a little kind of cold and distant to me, and I could feel it. And I was saying, giving a little bit of my background. He goes, you're not Jake Jacobs from California. I go, well, I used to live in California back in the 70s, but the fact of the matter is, I'm nothing like this left-wing Jake Jacobs who I had known about before. And he said he thought Mark had set him up, that he was setting him up with some left-wing nut job that was doing a thing on the border. So the point is, we had a ride along with Chris. We confronted cartel. We saw empirical, factual evidence that destroys the lives of Joe Biden and Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security. We also interviewed Tim Foley. Tim Foley used to have a construction job in Phoenix, Arizona. And I met him many, many years ago when I was giving a speech down in Tucson. And he said that he had left Phoenix, was living in Arivaca once again, Arivaca, Arizona, which is 8 miles from the border. He's not too far away from Sheriff Jim Chilton of the same area. And he started what's called the Arizona Border Recon. And he sets up cameras all along the border. And he and volunteer friends, they assist people who have been harmed by the cartel, and they get them to the Border Patrol. And he actually is so smart with understanding the Border Patrol goes to see Tim when it comes to finding ways throughout the southern part of the border. It's a sad fact that as Jim Chilton was telling me, and Tim Foley too, is the headquarters for the Border Patrol is in Tucson. That's more than an hour away from the border. So when there's illegal activity going on, whether it's fentanyl or human trafficking or sex trafficking, by time the ranchers or Arizona citizens are calling the Border Patrol and they're down there, in many cases, it's way too late. Because they need to be. One of the main arguments by Jim Chilton and others, Rancher Chilton, is the Border Patrol, the brunt of the agents need to be on the border so they can move quick, be mobile and agile so they can apprehend the criminal activity on the border. We also, by the way, interviewed a gentleman by the name of Jorge Rivas. Jorge escaped the Marxist, the communist of El Salvador many years ago. And he came to America, first California, then he moved to Tucson, Arizona, and now has a business called Sammy's Mexican Restaurant in Catalina, Arizona. Well, a number of years ago, I saw Jorge and his wife, Betty Rivas, is a Mexican-American. They're both Latino-Americans. They love America. They love our republic under God. Well, they loved Donald Trump in 2015, and they supported Donald Trump. And what had happened is they made a sign that said Latinos for Trump, and then they went to a Trump rally in Tucson. And then he eventually went to a Trump rally in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, all hell broke loose because this went on the news, and the wokocrats, the radical, corruptocrats, Democrats went crazy, these leftists. They threatened their business. They threatened their lives. They had to have the Tucson police protect them. I remember showing this stuff to my students at the academy where I used to teach. So at that moment, I knew I wanted to get to meet these great Americans. And we've become good friends. We hang out when we're down in Tucson. And I did an interview with him called American Crisis at the Border, An American Story. And it's a compelling story of a young man who fled the Marxists of El Salvador, came to America to be free. Ironically, isn't that interesting? The leftists say what a horrible, oppressive, deplorable country we are, and yet millions of people are still coming here to be free, right? Well, you know what? Before we continue with this story, let's take a short break. Welcome back to One Nation. Now, I got to tell you something. I just laid out to you the feet on the ground, so to speak, literally, in camouflage, weapons, to make sure I wasn't going to get shot by the cartel. We saw the cartel for the cartel, and we were in an area on Jim Chilton's ranch called, of all things, Marijuana Flats. It used to be an old hangout for hippies back in the day, literally. And when they saw the white truck we were in, they thought it was Border Patrol, and they ran up the hill and got away. But before we continue with this, I want you to see something that absolutely is grinding my gizzard. And what it is we had a special Homeland Security meeting in the House of Representatives. And the Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, is asked a question, and he's lying through his teeth to you and me, to the American people. Let's listen.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler.
Mr. Secretary, I want to address some of the outlandish claims my colleagues have made and put them to rest at the outset of this hearing. My Republican colleagues claim that the border is open. Is the border open, Mr. Secretary?
No, it is not.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The border is not open, and to say so is not only false, but is really an insult to the brave men and women of the Border Patrol who work every day to keep us safe.
You are an insult to the brave men and women of the United States of America that simply want to protect their families and their homes, that don't want this rainbow fentanyl flooding throughout America into Bismarck, North Dakota, Fargo, North Dakota, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Buffalo, New York, Seattle, all throughout the country because of your open border policy. So don't insult me and the American people by lying directly to our face. Remember old Bill Clinton? Now you listen to me, American people. I did not have sex with that woman. We knew then he was lying through his teeth. Well, they're shafting us again, my fellow Americans, because they're lying directly. They're looking into the camera and they're saying, no, the border is secure. The border is not open. That is a lie from the pit of hell. I've been there. I've seen it. I've experienced cartel. I've seen the drugs. I've seen the stories of heard the stories of individual young ladies being raped by the cartel. And they had the deep swamp audacity to put themselves on camera and say that there's no problem on the border and the border is secure. This just pisses me off. I can't believe this. Even the media, even the mainstream propagandist left-wing media, look at this headline. Migrant border crossings in fiscal year 2020 tops 2.7 million, breaking previous records. The media admits this, and here Mayorkas and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden continue to lie to the American people. This is absolutely disgusting. Now, the criminal activity by the Democratic Party has permeated all throughout the leadership within the Democratic Party. I want you to listen to Wisconsin Congressman Tim Tiffany of the 7th District. That's the district where Sean Duffy, you got Rachel Campos Duffy is his wife, and she has a program on Fox News. And Sean Duffy, a great congressman from the 7th District, is now headed by Tim Tiffany. And he, like me, has been on the border a number of times and has seen it. And he confronts Mayorkas about his lies about sheriffs on the southern border. Here goes.
The increased fentanyl is not tied to illegal border crossings. Do you agree with that statement?
No, it's not effectively managed right now. And until it is, the cartels are they're the winners of this.
Cartels are the winners. Sheriff Mark Daniels, under questioning here a few months ago before this committee, Cochise County down on the border of Arizona, he said the open border has led to a significant increase in the amount of fentanyl coming into this country. Do you agree with his assessment?
Congressman, we have taken it to the cartel.
Do you agree with his assessment? He said the amount of fentanyl has went up significantly as a result of the open borders policy implemented by this administration January 20th of 2021. Is he lying to us? Did Sheriff Daniels lie to us?
Congressman, I respectfully disagree with Sheriff Daniels, whom I know well.
So Sheriff Daniels is lying to us?
That is not what I said, Congressman, and let me...
Someone's not telling the truth here, Mr. Secretary. Someone's not telling the truth. It's either Daniels or it's you.
Someone's not telling the truth, Mr. Secretary. It's either Daniels or it's you. And it's you, Mayorkas. It's you. You are lying to the American people. When I mentioned Sheriff Mark Lamb of Pinell County, that was his friend from Cochise County of Arizona. We were right near that area. And the evidence upon evidence is showing the disastrous policies, open border policies of Joe Biden that started when? January 20th, 2021. January 20th, 2021, when we got a dismal Joe Biden as president of the United States of America. Now, from another Democrat who lies about what's happening on the border. He's the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and his name is Benny Thompson. Let's take a quick listen.
President Biden's and Secretary Mayorkas' leadership and hard work has paid off. Our borders are not open, and those arriving outside lawful pathways are being sent home. The facts do not support the Republicans' case. You don't impeach the president or a cabinet secretary because you do not like their policies.
Once again, top Democrats, all the Democrats, except for a few on the border in Texas who have congressional districts who have been imploring President Biden to actually support to close the border, right? Those in the Rio Grande del Rio area. Now, experts, like the experts I was with in Arizona, an expert from Texas by the name of Jason Jones. He's a retired captain from the Texas Department of Public Safety Intelligence. He works with counterterrorism. He was involved with the Operation Secure Texas. This guy knows the border, the policies inside and out. Let's take a quick listen to what he has to say about the lies of Biden and Mayorkas.
Chairman, the way it works on your southwest border, you hear the term all the time, operational control. The problem is no one ever tells you what that means and how the cartels have it, and that's what I'm going to share with you here today. And then to answer your question, and that is that they utilize a network known as the Halcon network. Halcons are scouts, they're lookouts. They check on and off, just like law enforcement, anywhere from 8-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts. I've seen them in South Texas as far as 30 miles into the United States. I have seen them in Arizona as far as 70 miles. They leverage two-way handheld encrypted radio, sometimes encrypted apps, and they communicate back to what is known as Central. So what happens is you have these lookouts everywhere. And when what they call the gate is open, the gate meaning a bend in the river or a bend at your border, when there is no law enforcement, they surge with whatever commodity it is that they want to push. So when you're talking about based on the policies of all of these migrants that have come from all over the world, what is happening is the cartel by design will push hundreds of people, as you have seen on every news station over the last few years, and media focuses on that. That causes the surge of local, state, and federal law enforcement to that location. And they do that by design because it opens up the other gates. Now, if they're going to move a commodity directly linked to a cartel boss, they'll shut down more gates to ensure that commodity makes it in. And what they do, Chairman, is they contract directly with U.S.-based street gangs and what we call Tier 1 gangs. Those are gangs which impact multiple regions in our country. They work directly with the cartels. And today, it is very important to understand, your U.S.-based street gangs are working side by side, contracting with the cartels. And I could go on and on here, but in 2009, Mexican Mafia, I was a lieutenant in Laredo, Texas, over 2 major drug squads, as the war broke out between CDG and the Zetas. And we were stunned at what we found. We had Mexican Mafia working in Mexico, working operations, going through basic, intermediate, and advanced training from former special forces and law enforcement, conducting hits in the United States and getting reduced costs of cocaine for that. That is the way it really works. So when you wonder today why you are being overrun with drugs, it is because the Tier 1 gangs and US-based street gangs are contracting and working directly with these cartels. And I will go back to this, and that is that they will not stop. They can't. They're going to have to be stopped, and we're going to have to really take extreme aggressive action to fix this.
What's really frustrating is to actually know the truth versus the lies of what's happening in Washington, D.C. And remember, it was Joe Biden who said surge to the border, and surge they did in the tunes of not hundreds of thousands, but millions and millions. And if he gets another term in office, we're going to be up to 12 to 15 million illegal aliens wearing on American taxpayers, hardworking citizens of this country. I want to show you a quick clip of my friend, Lieutenant Chris Lepre. We did a story, like I told you previously. You've got to see what we've put together on his story down on the border. Here goes.
Drug trafficking, prostitution, rape, murder, extortion, kidnapping, you name it. Fentanyl and carfentanil mixture is 1,000 times more deadly than fentanyl. Anybody that can leave people to die out in this environment, especially in the summer months or the cold months, probably one of the worst ways you can die next to burning to death. Sonora-plated Mustang on a known smuggling route. Welcome to Pinal County.
Now, it's an interesting move by the Biden administration is to use the Center for Biological Diversity. Now, this Center for Biological Diversity says there's about 92 different species of creatures that are going to be destroyed by the closed border policies of Donald Trump or closed border policies by anybody. And so, therefore, they're saying we must open the border so the environment can be pristine, so to speak. Well, Jim Chilton, the rancher from Arizona, has a case in the state of Arizona called Chilton versus the Center for Biological Diversity. They said that on his ranch, he was going to hurt this little like smelt chub fish creature and that he was hurting the environment. So Jim Chilton hired two experts, biological experts from University of New Mexico. They came to his ranch and they said, not only is he not hurting, he's actually helping the environment. And he won his case. And so I want you to see a little clip from the American Crisis at the Border called American Rancher. Here goes.
This is a drug area. There's over 100 trails coming through our ranch. One guy can pack a pound of fentanyl, enough to kill everybody in Tucson. There are cartel scouts on our mountain watching everything we do. You have to stand up to the bully. I'm here, I'm going to be here, so I'm going to be either on top of the ground or below the ground.
My fellow Americans, between the years 1776 and 1783, during the American Revolution, the fight against the tyranny of the despotic king of England, Thomas Paine wrote a classic pamphlet. He titled it The American Crisis, and it opens with these lines. These are the times that try men's souls. My fellow Americans, 2023, these are the times that tries the soul of America, the survival of America. Because we're dealing with nefarious left-wing, wokocrat, corruptocrat elements in this nation. Globalists who work with the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, who deny the sovereignty of the United States of America, who deny the sovereignty of we the people, as they floodgate in millions of illegal aliens, changing the characteristics of what it means to be in America, changing the characteristics of American citizenship, denying the reality of the rule of law and our constitutional federal republic under God. Now is the time for you and I to join together, to unite, e pluribus unum, making one united with the resolve that the republic, our republic under God, will not die, that we will fight to keep it. We will fight to expose this bizarre world of anything goesism, of wokocratism, this destruction of this great republic under God. So until we meet again, may God bless you, Godspeed, and happy trails to you.